What's the worst thing that happened at your child's daycare? My 6-month-old daughter Lily suddenly started sleeping more and more. When I picked her up from daycare one day, she was completely limp in her car seat and wouldn't wake up even when I changed her diaper. I was about to call the doctor when I noticed dried pink residue around the nipple of her bottle. I tasted it and immediately recognized it as the same medication I take for my allergies that always makes me sleepy. Someone at the daycare was drugging my baby. I drove straight back and demanded to speak to the director. She said that was a serious accusation and asked if I had proof of who did it. There were only 2 teachers in the infant room, Miss Carol, who'd been there 10 years, and Miss Jessica, who always seemed overwhelmed with the babies. I told the director the proof was in the bottle and my baby could barely stay awake. She looked at me like I was nuts and said maybe the residue was just formula. I demanded to see the classroom footage, but she said the cameras were for security only, and parents weren't allowed to view them without a court order. I took Lily to the emergency room where they confirmed she had Benadryl in her system at levels that were dangerous for an infant. The doctor said prolonged use could cause seizures or breathing problems and asked how long this had been happening. He also said he'd seen 2 other babies from the same daycare with similar symptoms in the past month, but hadn't connected the pattern. I realized Lily had been excessively sleepy for at least 3 weeks, but I'd blamed it on growth spurts and teething. The guilt nearly killed me. I called the police from the hospital, explained everything I had learned, but they said without knowing which employee did it, they couldn't arrest anyone. The officer actually suggested maybe I had given her too much medicine and forgot. I was in shock. I went back to the daycare shaking with rage and showed them the hospital report proving Lily had been drugged. Miss Carol barely looked at it and said, "Babies sleep a lot," while Miss Jessica stood there nervously avoiding eye contact. The director read the report and said she would investigate internally, but couldn't take action against her staff based on one child's test results. I demanded that every child at this daycare gets tested like my daughter did, but she said that would be illegal and open them to wrongful termination lawsuits. She actually told me that if I wasn't satisfied, I was welcome to find alternative childcare. I called every daycare within 40 minutes of my job, and they all had waiting lists over 8 months long. I couldn't afford a nanny, and my mom lived across the country, and if I missed another day of work, I'd be fired. I had to take Lily back there the next morning, and I threw up in the parking lot after dropping her off. I started calling other parents from Lily's room and found out 3 other babies had been unusually sleepy lately. One mom said her son had been so drowsy she took him to the doctor thinking he had mono. A dad told me he'd complained to Miss Carol directly about his son's lethargy, and she'd laughed and said he should be grateful for the break. These women were drugging multiple babies, and the director was protecting them. I found out from a former employee that parents had complained about babies being too sleepy in Miss Carol's room for years, but nothing ever happened because she was friends with the director's sister. When I threatened to go to the media, the director pulled out my enrollment contract and showed me the arbitration agreement I'd signed, plus the paragraph that said I'd be liable for damages if I hurt their reputation. Miss Carol must have felt untouchable because when I picked Lily up that afternoon, she smirked at me and said, "Rough day?" I wanted to do something that would get me 25 to life right there in front of everyone, but instead I leaned in and told her I knew what she was doing. She whispered back, "Prove it," and winked at me while my baby lay unconscious in my arms. The next morning, I had to drop Lily off again, and it felt like handing her to a monster, but I had hidden a camera in her diaper bag. I sat in the parking lot watching the live feed on my phone with my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold it steady. At 10:15, I watched Miss Carol pull a bottle of children's Benadryl from her personal bag and squirt it into 4 different bottles, including Lily's. She even swirled each bottle to mix it in before placing them in the fridge. She drugged 4 babies in under 2 minutes like it was part of her morning routine. I had her on video committing a felony against multiple infants. I knew exactly what I had to do to end this. Full story on the channel below.